and welcome to Bordertown Strange. I'm Pam.
I'm Jess.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Enzo.
And this is, yay, he did it.
Yay.
You did it.
And you'll notice we have a couple of more people than normal tonight, which is really good. Enzo, you've met before. Scotty's new with us, and they are both new auxiliary members in Bordertown Paranormal. So we wanted them to join us tonight, hang out, and get to meet everybody and let everybody meet them.
To embrace.
I'm so glad I wrote that up for nothing.
Oh, did I say it all?
Okay, so I'm going to read it because I sat here and wrote it with a bad pen. So it's going to get read.
Okay. That's right. You did have a rough time.
I did. So here we go. So members of Bordertown Paranormal have a big announcement to make. For the first time in 5 years, we are expanding our membership by 2 due to an increase in our time contributed to research, investigating, speaking engagements, podcasting, and public outreach. We have decided to add 2 gentlemen who have become very good friends to our organization. Enzo Cyril, who you all know, from Derby, Kansas, who has a background in military history and astronomy. And Scott Rademacher from Arkansas City, who has experience with Bigfoot hunting, and cryptids, and is in charge of the Kansas Sightings page on Facebook. We are excited to welcome them both to the Bordertown ranks. May God help you.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was much better than what I said. So, yay.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, a little bit of Bordertown history for anybody who doesn't know. So, we've told the story before about how we all started in 2012. We got it down to a core group of 5. And within a year, we had to ditch one, unfortunately, who was not up to our standards in any way, shape, or form.
Did not play well with others.
Yes. And at the time, we had decided just to keep it at the 4. Now, 5 years ago, we added Jen as an auxiliary member. And she's solely an auxiliary member because she doesn't do everything with us. She really helps on the research end of things and home investigating. So that's where she's strong at. But like I said in my little speech, we have found ourselves stretched very thin lately. We all fight just to get in ends meeting at the end of every month, everything that we have to do. And we were like, you know what? We really should start looking at maybe adding some members who could really help us out in some of these areas. And the 2 that we really thought of was Enzo, of course, because he's so knowledgeable with military and with astronomy. Yes. Is well spoken, and he's very used to podcasting. That's kind of just what he does. He's like the podcaster aficionado. And then we were really looking towards like the cryptid Bigfoot side of things. We don't always we're fairly knowledgeable in it, but not as knowledgeable as we could be. So to expand out that way, we were like, hey, let's grab Scott. I think he knows what he's doing, and I think he has a little bit of time to head towards us. Some of the other Bigfoot people that we know are busier than we are. So we were like, we're dragging Scott in here if he'll give us an okay on that. So.
Sounds good.
Welcome to our ranks. I wish the other 2 members were here to welcome you, but they don't like to podcast. So they're lost.
They're lost. That's right.
They're
More
lost.
time for us.
There you go.
Everybody has their strong suits.
That's right. All right. Would either of you like to make some type of a speech before I move on?
Some type of a speech.
Oh, I don't know. You could talk about your accolades or, how you thank God for giving you this position, or, do you want some flowers or a trophy of some sort?
Another one of these.
Or you just want to
there you go.
make fun of
we could probably send you some of that. You're gonna want a drink after dealing with us for a while, so yes, we can handle that. All right.
Well,
so let's move on.
I'll just say it's just an honor to be part of the group. I mean,
Aw.
Aw.
Hey,
I know that I'm still learning on a lot of things, and I think this is a great opportunity. So being with Red Dirt Cryptid's been a lot of fun, and I'll still help them out, when I have a chance. So
awesome.
they're a great group too. They're a lot of fun. They're extremely knowledgeable, and I think I've learned a lot from them, and I owe them a lot. So
Cool.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is. When you originally sent me the offer, I was shocked. I was like, wow,
yeah.
must have really bamboozled these people. Suckers. No, it's I was humbled that you would ask me to join, and more than happy to come in and help. I don't know how much help I could be sometimes, being as far away as I am, but hopefully soon I'll have a more mobile device that a lab device I can use to visit your area in a semi-permanent fashion.
Awesome.
Awesome.
And what type of mobile unit would that be?
Oh Lord.
We're gonna make you say it.
my mobile crime lab is basically what it would turn out to be. I was talking with Jess a little bit about these scientist guys that were doing UAP research out in Long Island, where they converted an RV into this mobile lab. They had like a home built radar system on the roof. They've got marine type radar like they have on big boats out in the ocean that they were using, and a lot of thermal imagery, which they've had a lot of positive results with. So the whole time I'm like, I'm ordering this book. I'm going to be mounting this stuff on top of that dumb van someday.
No, I think you need to get a big red semi with the double stacks and paint it like Optimus Prime, and just get the semi trailer and turn the semi trailer into a home slash
with a really nice antenna farm on top.
For our age group, that initial description was like, "You're not making a BJ and the Bear reference, are you?" It's,
No. I mean, we could get you a pet chimpanzee. It'd be cute.
I thought that was going to be you. That was going to be your position.
Well, I mean, I resemble that. I mean,
all right, you two. We need to move on with the show because we got a big one ahead of us. Oh my goodness. All right, so moving on, before we start into the show here, I'm going to do my normal little bit of housekeeping. Same thing as always. Everybody who's on Facebook, take just a second and share this right now. Share it with all your friends. It kind of helps get our stuff out there. If you're on YouTube, remember to subscribe and hit the thumbs up and hit the bell so it'll alert you whenever we have a show coming up. And of course, you can get us wherever you get your podcast. So if you want to listen in the car, you can hear us there too. We encourage everybody to get onto the chats. Feel free to ask questions and converse with us back and forth. We love it. And stay till the end of the show so you can catch the notebook games because everybody can participate with that. So now we're going to move on to our new segment. It's time for our What the Weird Word of the Week. Where's the...
Are we ready?
Enzo! That's it. You're out.
Oh, no. It was a good run. Well, it lasted.
Goodness.
So this week's, or this show's What the Weird, the word is stone tape theory. And you may or may not be familiar with this one. It's also known as a residual haunting. And this is a paranormal event that we see a lot around this area, and it's largely due to the type of stone that we have. We have a lot of sandstone in the area, which is full of quartz. And if you're familiar with quartz radios, that's pretty much how they are run, is with quartz, crystal quartz, which lends right to what a residual haunting is, where it soaks into what's in the environment, soaks into the stone, and it plays it back like a tape recording. So you'll see things maybe in a loop. You'll hear footsteps that go down a hallway and turn into a room over and over and over again. But the interesting part about it, we're sure that it works that way, but we don't know why, and we don't know what sets it off. So there's really no way to tell when it's actually going to happen. Want to add anything to that?
No, I mean,
I think that's it.
Silicon quartz is the basis for all the microprocessors in these bad boys. So if it works on
it's
these,
very much. Yeah,
and it doesn't have to just be footsteps. It can also be voices. You know, it can
images.
be images. It could be doors opening and closing. It could be all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Jess. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we've discussed it before. A lot of the things that happen out in the Sandhills, we think comes off of that. There is stuff that's amped up during the times that the flooding is happening and kind of amplifying all that quartz crystal. But there are a lot of things that happen over and over again. There's, they call them the caravan lights that happen over the hill past a little cemetery we have out there. And I'm pretty sure that right there is most likely a residual that just keeps popping up over and over and over again.
Yep. I think you're right. And Jennifer's actually one of our other members. She is in the chat. She's telling you guys, welcome to Bordertown. Woohoo.
Yay.
All righty. Go ahead and pull that down.
All right. So we ready to start this topic? So I'm going to give everybody a heads up. So the last show, we of course did Black-Eyed Kids, and towards the end, we still had a little bit more to go, and we had just kind of touched on their connections to the Men in Black, and there was a lot of people very interested in that topic. So that's where this is going to continue on to. We're going to talk about how the Men in Black and the Black-Eyed Kids are kind of connected, how they're kind of the same, but also how they're very much different. We were actually discussing this backstage. We didn't realize exactly. I mean, I knew that Men in Black was a big topic. I just did not know how big it was. I literally spent the entire day trying to weed out and lean it down to make this into one show where we just touch on where they're kind of like the Black-Eyed Kids. It's going to go so far beyond that, and we're probably going to get into the weeds a number of times, going completely off topic here. Sure. So Pam and I have already discussed it. In the future, it may happen in the next show, or it may get skipped for a little while and we come back to it. But there will be an entire series just on Men in Black if you're interested, because I think it's ever so interesting, and it touches so many different fields of study. They creep into every little corner. So
they do, and there is so much. I didn't realize how much material there was out on them. And I know I'm still pulling books off my shelf right before the show and going, okay, crud, there's stuff in these too. You know, I didn't even touch on these two, you know, Communion and some of my Valley stuff.
Yeah.
So there's tons of it.
And I know Enzo had sent me a couple that he had that I had never even heard of. So,
nice.
This should be a well-rounded show, and the Men in Black series that we're due to do is going to be phenomenal and insane. So,
probably, I'm going to assume it won't be the next show. Maybe it could be, but I don't know.
Anything I'm associated with is bound to be insane.
That's very true.
Strange and unusual, yes.
Strange and unusual.
So I figured I would get the ball rolling by kind of reacquainting everybody with the tributes that the Black-Eyed Kids have. So as we start into the Men in Black stuff, you can really start to see the comparisons there. And I will add, Scotty's new here. And we told him backstage, just hop in whenever you want. If you have an opinion on something, or if you have a story, or you remember something that we didn't touch on, just hop in there. And we tend to talk over each other, which is a horrible habit. I know. We're trying to stop doing that. If you have to, do one of these. so we can see. Just be like, hey, idiots, let me talk. Enzo has had to do that before too. We're getting better, I promise.
Yeah.
I've been trying. I've been bad about that my whole life, and I've been trying to break myself of it the last few years.
Yeah, it's just we get so excited about the topic. We're really not being rude to anybody. We just start going, and then it's impossible to stop.
Don't know when to stop.
It is tough too here on StreamYards, where there is like a millisecond delay between all of us. So when one of us stops speaking and then the next person's like, okay, now's my chance to come in. It sounds like this unusual gap sometimes.
Yes.
So then someone else will be like, oh, we need to fill that dead air. So you get multiple people all speaking at the same time and nobody can understand anything that's being said. So that's kind of common.
Yeah. If you want to speak next, just do a wave or just stick your hand up so everybody can see it. And then we can, especially with 5 of us here tonight, it's going to get a little wacky. So, all right. So just to get us started, I'm going to go back over the attributes of the Black Eyed Kids so we can get rolling into Men in Black. And then you're going to really see how a lot of this touches and some of it doesn't. So, and you guys can hop in too, of course. So Black Eyed Kids. So the number one thing is that they have completely black eyes or even missing eyes. And more often than not, it's not even noticed right away. It's not noticed until they're deep into a conversation with you that suddenly you've realized, and that's when the doom begins. They're almost always children or teens with pale or olive toned skin, although there are reports of adults that we kind of touched on the last time. They almost always come in pairs. They usually speak like adults in monotone voices. They repeat themselves a lot. They talk in awkward, memorized ways. They make odd references like, I don't have a gun, and can I have ketchup on my apple? We did those stories.
Is it food time?
Yeah. They ask permission to enter your home or a vehicle, very much like a vampire would. And they don't come in unless they're asked to. And when they are asked to come in, the results are usually fairly bad.
Yes.
They make people and pets sick. Yes, poor decision. Although I don't know why you would want to invite them in. I don't know. Yeah, they make people and pets sick, especially when they do come into your home. Sometimes they speak telepathically. They're often dressed in hoods or hats that hide their eyes, or sometimes they'll have long bangs, or they'll keep their head tilted down so you can't see directly into their face. Their clothing is usually strange. It's usually out of date, mismatched, completely unbranded. You'll never find brand names on the hoodies and things. Sometimes the clothing even looks like it's from the wrong time period altogether. They're also associated with bad odors. They'll smell like dirt, like mold, like mildew, and sometimes even feces. They're easily angered and will start to yell at you, but still in that weird monotone, trippy way that they do. Sometimes they look gaunt or look like their skin's too loose for them, like they're sitting in the wrong kind of body.
Yes, they're very uncomfortable in their skin.
Yes. They've also never been recorded. They don't show up on video footage. They've had them show up and not show up on ring bells on the videos and stuff. And sometimes they'll glitch out right when they were there and then pop back on after they're gone. Yeah. They leave a feeling of unease and dread. They often leave contactees with a sense of being completely scared. They won't leave their homes after they've been introduced to the Black Eyed Kids, at least for that night. Contactees often report nightmares afterwards and repeated appearances of those same BEKs in their dreams for years after. They'll just pop into their dreams, just be like, hey, I'm still here.
It's like once they've focused in on them, they can beacon right back to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Contactees also report bodily actions that they themselves did not initiate. So we get a lot of stories where they'll say to open the door and the contactee is thinking, I'm not opening the door for you, but they're watching their hand go towards the doorknob involuntarily.
It really, the more I listen to it, we can tie them into vampires too, because a lot of the vampire legends, we're hitting all the stops.
Yes.
We are, and that's something we'll touch on a little bit later. Is they do kind of they've been around a lot longer than the 50s, and which is when a lot of these things started in. And we're going to run into times where there weren't a term for them, but they were there, and probably vampire could very well be one of those terms. And then Karen was asking, are Men in Black affiliated with aliens and black-eyed kids with hauntings?
Yes. And we're going to talk about all of that tonight.
Say all the above.
Yeah.
For sure.
The last big one I have is that they, more often than not, they miraculously appear and disappear just as quickly, usually without the time they're needed to make their exits and entrances, which is a really big Men in Black thing too. So, yeah. Now, moving on. Where do we want to start? Do we want to talk about what?
I'm looking through some of my notes because you hit a lot of what I had right there. Let's see. Let's see if I can find any. Oh, one that we didn't talk about is black-eyed kids, even though they're almost always in a range from like 16 or younger. Even the teenage-looking ones, they don't have any blemishes of any kind. They don't have freckles. They don't have acne, and normally they would, but they never do. And like Jess had hit on the manner of speech. They speak in a very monotone manner. They want to be, just let us in, mister. We're little kids and we're scared. Just let us in, kind of thing, which is freaky.
It is.
Cute. But, those are the biggies that I didn't have, or that I had that I didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
Cold monotone speech patterns.
Yeah. All right. So what are the Men in Black? Everybody want to pitch in on that?
Well, the overall generic Men in Black name, the MIB name, it kind of falls under that umbrella of any kind of they may tell you that they're part of the government or some other thing. And actually, not unlike the black-eyed children, there's been several cases where they'll come to the door saying that, hey, I'm here to read the meter in your water meter in the basement, or we're here. We think you may have won a fabulous prize, whatever. May I come in? Again, it's one of those you got to let them in kind of things, which has happened quite a few times. But they're just better at disguising it than the kids, I guess. But generally, though, MIB stands for any type of kind of neutrally dressed person that usually comes after some type of paranormal experience that someone has witnessed, and they're basically going to threaten you to not talk about it anymore.
Yeah, there's been a lot of, if you want to call them Men in Black, cases like that with like Bigfoot sightings.
Nice.
Somebody makes it public, that they have some sort of a sighting, or they even have like a video. And there's been reports of the MIB showing up at their house too.
I have heard those.
Yeah.
Karen's asking time travelers. That's a big question. It's very possible. A lot of people, that is a working theory for sure.
Yeah.
There have been, like, I know with most of my experience about reading about them, knowing about them is through John Keel's Mothman Prophecies, which I read as a kid and I've reread a few times. I even have it open on the screen next to me here. But it's there would be people where they would just tell like one person. Yeah. Like they would just talk to John Keel about it. It's like, hey, I saw this weird thing. It did this thing and blah, blah, blah. It's okay. I'll be by next week to talk to you about it. And then these people show up. They show up out of nowhere. It's like, how did they know this? How did they know that I even saw anything, much less to know to come around to tell me to shut up about it?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. John Keel goes deep into,
Too deep.
Well, I mean, so did Gray Barker. So you're going to hear us talk about John Keel a lot tonight. You're going to hear us talk about Gray Barker a lot tonight. In fact, a lot of people suggest that it was Gray Barker's fault that this has become something, that he introduced it through his books, which is completely false. It was introduced before him, and in fact, over the years, and we're not going to talk about this tonight at all because it goes way too deep and we won't have time, but there are signs that there were men in black around long before. They just had different ways of talking about them. They didn't call them the men in black, much like before Brian Bethel, Black Eyed Kids didn't have the moniker Black Eyed Kids. They were called other things because they didn't have that to denote to it yet. So yeah, you're going to hear us talk a lot about that. I think before we really get rolling here, I want to kind of show where this is connected and where it's not connected at. There's a weird thing going on with this. So you almost always have some type of UFO sighting, or like Scotty said, like a cryptidy kind of sighting or something paranormal to do before the men in black show up at your door. It's not the same with the Black Eyed Kids. There has never been a story where there was a UFO sighting before the Black Eyed Kids showed up at your door. However, there are many stories where the Black Eyed Kids knocked at the door, they told them no, and they went back to the car with the men in black.
Yes.
Oddly enough.
So there is a connection there.
There's some sort of connection there.
We just don't know what it is.
It's also completely disconnected at the same time. That's why there's gonna be 80 different directions tonight. So there's this oddity that we're dealing with.
You know, there's something else when it comes to the Black Eyed Kids. They're never reported to have iPod or cell phone or any kind of electronics with them at all, which in this day and age is highly unusual and they act like they don't know what they are. Like there's a gentleman a kid came up to him and was like, can you take me to my house? And he was like, do you want to call your mom? Yeah, I want to call my mom. Well, what's her number? And the kid's just like, 6. And the guy's like, okay, that's not a phone number. And then he looks at the kid and then he realizes the child has black eyes and he's like, okay, yeah, I'm out of here. But I just love
me a
that
filter
one.
for here
What's
so I
her
can
number?
make my eyes black.
6.
Correct.
It makes me think is it 6 of 9? Is that who it was?
7 of 9.
7 of 9. Thank you. I was so close, but so far off.
So far.
Jerry Ryan could have had black eyes. I'd never made it up that far.
Potential.
All right, so attributes of the men in black. Let's do that, because then you're going to start really seeing the comparison and the counter comparison there. So men in black also almost always have paler olive tone skin. Their eyes aren't usually black. It's been reported a couple times, but they're usually either too tiny for them or they're too large for their faces.
Definitely off.
Yes, and they're often reported as having a type of an Asian appearance where they've got the little bit more of the slant to them than usual. They're usually, of course, wearing their black suits or dark blue suits, or they'll have black turtlenecks.
Yeah.
Somehow there's a dark color there. And they're almost always ill-fitting, which I thought was interesting. It kind of reminds me of the Black Eyed Kids not looking correct in their skin. Right?
Yeah.
And of course they not always, but they usually will have a black hat on of some sort, usually like a fedora style or like a bowler type style. Later on, I'm going to mention some that actually have cowboy style on, but they're kind of like in this little weird subgroup.
They are.
Sometimes they're seen without shoes, oddly enough. Or if they are wearing shoes, they're usually dress shoes that are super shiny, as if they've never been worn before. They usually are reported as having an otherworldly appearance, although people can't quite pinpoint why that is. They just have this kind of aura about them. They have an oddly mechanical or robot manner, much like the kids do. Their movements can appear awkward or unnatural. much like the kids. Sometimes reported to have too perfect skin or overly smooth faces, like Pam was talking about with the kids. Strange behaviors, like not knowing what common household objects are used for, or not knowing how to eat food or to drink. And we talked about a little bit about that the last time, them saying the weirdest stuff. In fact, John Keel writes a lot of those very strange situations that happen in the Mothman prophecies. They repeat themselves in a demanding way, very BEK. They make odd references that don't make sense. I already said that. They sometimes speak telepathically, black-eyed kids. They often know things about contactees that they shouldn't. Interesting.
That's almost always the case, it seems like.
Yeah. They scare animals and sometimes make them sick, BEKs. Bad odors like dirt, mold, mildew, and feces, black-eyed kids. Easily anger, will yell and threaten, black-eyed kids. They use intimidation tactics. They will appear and disappear quickly, black-eyed kids. Often seen in or being picked up in black vehicles. And often those vehicles are a very old model, but look brand spanking new, which is almost across the board. Interesting. I don't know what the heck that's about. Contactees often have nightmares.
Just to tack onto the vehicle thing too. There's several reports of when they go to leave, because they're like, I didn't hear a car pull up, and when they do finally leave the house, they'll like look outside and they see that a late model black sedan will pull up with no headlights on. They'll get in and drive off again with no headlights on.
Yes,
the entire way.
In fact, I have a couple of stories to tell that I found about the weirdness that happens with the cars.
Something else about the men in black, you talked about how they're not comfortable in their clothing, and same with the black-eyed kids. And I didn't notice this earlier. This was a picture that Jess had pulled, that I have pulled up here. And some of the reports I was seeing is where their suits don't fit correctly. Their arms look smaller than their bellies, like they're stuffed, like the belly portion is stuffed. And both of these guys actually kind of look like the belly portion of their suits are stuffed. They look strange.
Yeah, especially that guy on the right. He's standing in a weird way, and then it does look like he has something underneath the jacket.
Looks like he's pregnant.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It's Jake and Elwood, so
it does kind
That's
of look
who I
like
always
the Blues
think
Brothers.
of when I think of the Men in Black, is Jake and Elwood.
All right, two more things. Contactees often have nightmares, and they appear repeatedly in their dreams, black-eyed kids. Reports of strange phone calls afterwards that have nothing but mechanical sounds, clicks, beeps, or ominous messages. And we're going to talk a whole lot about that. I'm sure, especially Enzo, since he really hit the Mothman prophecies hard, he's going to have lots of stories to tell about that.
Karen said that the one guy looks like he's hiding a black-eyed kid in his belly.
Get in my
belly. Some people think that they're like the children of the Men in Black, like they're being raised up,
and it could be
to become them.
Maybe they're kidnapping kids.
There are so many different theories about what the black-eyed kids and the Men in Black are. It's crazy. I know I have a bunch of them listed out too somewhere.
Yeah,
we'll get
like
in a little bit.
Number one, they think aliens. They're uncomfortable in their skin. Are they wearing, it's very like the movie Men in Black. Are they in people suits? Ew.
Yeah. Like the guy that's the bug.
Yeah.
Staggering down the road.
Yeah. Are they government related?
That's actually another part of the description is they like kind of lurch around. They don't have like a normal
they waddle.
gait.
They waddle
look like they have the same joints as a human being.
Yeah.
And I ran across something that was fascinating, and I had not run across this before when it comes to the Men in Black. And this is by Peter McMillan. And he talks about the modeling and the origins and the purposes of Men in Black. And he talks about bioengineered bodies. Have you guys heard this one?
No,
It's
I have
freaky.
not.
So basically he looks at it as with the notion that anything born of human flesh can be occupied by spirit, right? So you can be possessed or whatever. So it's conceivable that a sufficiently advanced medical technology could provide this spirit or whatever with bioengineered replacement bodies. Okay. So if they grew these bodies in a controlled lab from human tissue parts and DNA samples that are taken from already living specimens, they could come up with these men in black. So it's, if you put, and this goes with like possession. If someone is possessed, they waddle, they don't walk correctly. You can tell whatever's in them isn't used to controlling this body. So this is kind of a theory of how that could happen. But he goes a little bit further with this, which I thought was really interesting, to say that this replacement technology and the constant need for fresh meat, basically to clone, may also help explain the purpose behind cattle mutilations and alien abduction experiments. Because if you think about it, they're always like, oh, I've been abducted and they're doing experiments on me. At some point, are they going to have to continue to experiment on people? They're not dumb, so they're going to get the information they need and be able to move on. So what is the true reason for them abducting?
Harvesting DNA.
Could it be to harvest DNA? Exactly. And if they do that, then they can get the brain, the nervous system, the organs, the muscles, speech apparatus, everything, supporting skeleton, and, even the outer skin. And they could get it put together and then inhabited with the spirit or whatever, alien. I don't know what you would call it, but then it could be specially trained and sent on missions, So that may be the men in black that we see. It may be the black-eyed kids.
Could be as simple
it also
as
be the grays. They could be a different type of it. I thought that was a pretty fascinating.
Well, basically, you're talking like a biological robot where they can just transfer their mind into, okay, you need to be a human, direct contact with humans. So we're going to just transfer your thoughts into the human suit thing and go off about it, where it's not exactly right. Because most of our stories about Men in Black are from, the 50s and 60s and 70s. You don't hear as much about them nowadays, probably because their technology has improved enough to where we can't tell the difference anymore.
Yeah. More than likely.
Or just our regular government is kind of taking over the same role, but that's a whole other topic. But it is one of those things where if you're going to go to that stage where these are biomechanical type bodies, because in Mothman Chronicles, they prophecies rather, they do talk about Tiny, which was the name of the guy, the Men in Black that came to the one person's house and had the ill-fitting suit, the whole works, but he was like 6'6", and called Tiny. And as he sat down, his pants were too short, so when he sat, that's when the pant leg rolled up, and you could see like a green wire going into his leg somehow and stuff like that, and acting strange, which they all act strange. They've had quite a few years to kind of acclimatize themselves to normal humanity kind of a thing. So it's certainly strange, and I don't think they go as far as doing the Jake and Elwood thing anymore. They've kind of gotten away from that, but for back then, in the 50s and 60s, for sure, they really stood out.
Well,
they did.
I've been watching a lot of news lately, and have you seen all the pictures of all of our lawmakers trying to show that they do normal person things? It's almost like they're doing the Men in Black thing. The raw hamburgers on the grill, trying to use the jack.
Hello, fellow citizens.
Take a wheel off, like we're normal human beings. So just throwing that out there. Seeing some really weird crap on the internet. And it just makes me wonder.
What's wild about
body
this,
snatchers.
if you look at the bioengineered thought, it's really not that far out there, because even today, like, research that's on the frontier of these things, scientists at MIT, they're already doing things like this with individual photons in like real matter. They're able to, I don't know if you've seen them. There was one that popped up the other day somebody was talking about, where it's the little cluster of cells, and it's got eyeballs, basically just rudimentary eyes in it. It's really weird looking, but they're trying to grow skin, basically, is what they're trying to do. But in the process, it's and it doesn't have a brain. It's not, it doesn't know anything. It's not a person, but it is biological material for sure. Bioengineering. Pretty interesting.
That's just about as frightening as anything I can think of.
Oh, 100% it is.
I mean, the big dream is to start cloning organs and stuff.
Yeah.
What's to stop them from cloning and creating their own person?
They've actually moved beyond the idea of cloning versus 3D printing, based off of your own DNA, where they can basically 3D print an organ that's made from your own DNA, so there won't be any kind of problem with organ refusal and stuff like that, like you would get with a normal transplant, where it comes from a totally different human. So you're already, there's no immuno response when it's your DNA and everything else. Your body won't reject that.
Yeah, and that's the biggest problem with it. So.
And to go swing back to our mysterious Men in Black kind of a thing, where maybe they're some other entities from somewhere else in a human robo kind of a suit. If you 3D map your brain, and then we're able to just reprint it inside of the shell of another creature, a human, it could easily transfer your consciousness into it. You're still going to have to learn, you're not going to know all the social stuff, which is what we see with these Men in Black, is they don't know what the hell a ballpoint pen is and are just mystified by it. How
they try to
such
drink
a thing could be.
Jello.
I
they try to drink Jello and don't know how to use a knife and a fork to cut their steak and eat it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
I don't have it up here right now, but I was reading the other day, and I just lost my thought. Welcome to Swiss cheese brain, Scotty. This is why I have that.
That's starting to make sense.
Yes. I was reading something pertinent the other day, and it just escapes.
It's all right. You'll get it back.
I'll remember it here in a minute.
Yeah, just jump in when you do.
Moving on along.
Yeah. So, what the Men in Black are, nobody knows. But we just know that they're associated with so many different fields and so many different things. It's like they've touched every little supernatural, paranormal, cryptid, alien, UFO, anything you can think of, they've touched on. And even so, like, have you guys heard the Dan Aykroyd story?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you need to tell it. It's great.
Okay, so this happened back in 2002. I don't know if you all remember. He used to have a show on called Out There.
Yeah.
I think it was like on travel or history, or I can't remember what. But it was a show on basically, like aliens and UFO reports, and like the truth behind it, which is what Dan Aykroyd does. If you don't know, from Ghostbusters fame, he's actually like neck deep in this stuff. His family history runs through the old stuff back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and the spiritualism movements and all of this. His family was all a part of that. So this is this kind of stuff he does. Anywho, moving beyond that, he was actually, I think it was in January of 2002, he was in New York, and he was filming that day interviews for this show. Like they do the interviews with all the different, guests that are coming in and out. And he decided to take a break, and he went out back behind the building to have a smoke. And he was standing there minding his own business. And he said he looked down and he looked up. And when he looked back up, there was suddenly a black Ford sedan parked right across the road from him. And the door popped open and out got this dude dressed all in black and just stood there and stared him down unblinkingly. Like until Dan Aykroyd got so cowed down that he looked down to like break that eye contact with him. And when he looked back up, it was all gone. No car, no guy standing there. Completely unnerved, just like what everybody talks about. You have that feeling of dread and unease. And he chucked his cigarette, went back inside, finished up his interviews for the day and went home. And that evening he got a phone call to let him know that they had suddenly dumped his show.
Yep. It was no
They
more.
didn't even use the stuff that he had filmed that day. They just suddenly dumped it out of nowhere. And he never had anything to do with that show ever again. And he always wondered, you know, was it the Men in Black that dumped his show?
It does fall under that purview where they say, you know, they'll give you the basic warning. It's like, don't tell anybody about what you saw because there's going to be problems. And they even mention it in Keel's books where these people that experience this because of like the olive skin and everything else, they just like, I thought they were mafia. Because that's what they were acting like.
Yes.
Like I'm making you an offer you can't refuse. You either do this or you will meet with an unfortunate accident. Kind of a thing. So that I get it. That is along those lines where that next iteration would be suddenly their boss gets a call saying, "Hey, did you know that this person is doing this?" That kind of a thing. It's like, wow, we need to fire. So I get it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Quickly too.
And the car disappearing all of a sudden too. So I wanted to touch on that. We mentioned that earlier about Enzo was talking about the weird things going on with cars. Like we said before, like they're usually classic cars, but they don't look old. They look like they're just off the floor new. Often they never have tags, or if they do have tags, they're reported as looking blurry, as if someone had put the blurry spot over the photo. They can't be read or photographed. And I actually found there's a fantastic book by Nick Redfern that he did that just has some of the most fantastic stuff in it, the way he puts things together. And I stole a couple of stories out of his book that would just touched on the cars. And I just took little snippets out so you guys could hear it, because I've never heard of anything like this. Super interesting. So the first one, this guy named Jim Wilson, apparently, he had a run-in with some men in black. They were surveilling his home. He never actually had like a one-on-one thing with them. He would just see them off in the distance. And it got so unnerving that he actually called the police on them, and the police came out and just kept missing them. Like they wouldn't be there, and then they would reappear as soon as the cops were gone. And finally, the cops caught up with them. And as the officers were walking to this black Jaguar, is what they said it was, they literally watched it melt. They watched it melt and drip down and just become nothing right in front of them. The cops wouldn't even write a report about it. They were just like, they noped the heck on out of there and were like, you're on your own, buddy.
Sorry, bro.
I blame them.
Enjoy playing
like,
the
that's
alien.
my pay grade.
That's just not wild.
Yeah.
That's just beyond belief.
It is.
That is
So,
crazy.
yeah, the next one I found in Nick Redfern's book, and if you want to, Pam, you can show Nick Redfern's book. It's The Diary. If you're interested in just every facet of Men in Black, snag this book up, because it talks about black-eyed kids, women in black. There's women stories. So I'm going to go ahead and, The Black Diary by Nick Redfern. Excellent book. I'm going to have to go back and reread it. I had to skip through it because I was just trying to find pertinent information for today.
That's what I was running into as well. So
yeah. So I'm going to just read this one verbatim. It's just a little tiny paragraph. Super interesting one. It's by this lady named Amy. She said, and this is in England, by the way, They have them over there too. As we entered Staffordshire, I noticed there was an old black Lincoln car coming towards us in the opposite direction. Although it was old, it looked brand new, but it was an old style, and it was totally out of place. And coming from England and Cheshire, that's just not the kind of car you see. An American Lincoln. That's what I thought. What's an American car doing here? As the car approached us, coming the other way, I tried to see who the driver was, but I couldn't see anybody. I'm not saying that the car was driving itself, but I just couldn't make out anyone. No one. I could see it had really shiny bumpers, and there was no license plate at all. So there we go with that again.
Yeah.
And I noticed that with every car behind that Lincoln, it had cars behind that Lincoln. It was like the leader of a pack. I could see the drivers of the cars behind were all kind of switched off looking. It looked like they were in automatic mode, like they were in a daze. It was very, very odd. We got down the road and my friend said, "Did you see the way that vehicle was moving?" And I said, "No, what do you mean?" And he said, The wheels were going around, but they weren't touching the ground.
Oh,
It was like it was hovering, but not high.
So it's like a doggy when you hold them up and they paddle anyway.
That is
Yeah, so
kinda
it was a
crazy.
whole line of brand new, like 1980s looking, probably American Lincolns with their wheels rolling, but they weren't actually touching the ground. They were just coasting.
That is
Weird.
That
Yeah,
was
but-
super weird.
Karen
Yeah,
from
so-
Doof Doof Paranormal's here too in the chat. So hi,
Hey.
Karen.
Yeah, Keel had a few things where people would, see this. They'd have this strange encounter with these people, and then they'd get in their, all black Lincoln or Cadillac type full size vehicle and drive away. And again, this is all in like 1967. So these are giant boat type vehicles. These are big old things and hard to miss. And they'd write down the license plate and give it to Keel, and Keel would call his pals, at the state police and stuff like that. And they'd like, yeah, these plates don't come back to anything at all. This isn't even a real plate. It doesn't even come back to like a stolen plate or anything like that off a different vehicle. And he also goes on to say that after like a year of him, doing his investigations there in Point Pleasant and stuff like that, that the black sedan style vehicles got changed to Volkswagens, which seems a little awkward for some of these characters, but
They're like, oh, we need to throw a European model in.
I don't know. I can't imagine seeing some 6'6" monster with wires hanging out of his leg, unrolling himself out of a Volkswagen, but
No, not a Volkswagen. A BMW, yes. Volkswagen, no.
right.
Goodness.
So next they might be
Yeah.
throwing it up like a Tesla or something,
Oh,
be more
maybe.
economically friendly.
Yeah.
Maybe so. While we're talking a little bit about Point Pleasant and Mothman prophecies, Enzo, do you want to talk a little bit about Indrid Cold? I did find what is supposed to be the photo of him, and I put it on here as well. But
Yeah, Indrid Cold is
Creepy looking sucker.
very, very unique story to briefly encapsulate it. This was all kind of around that 1966 through 68 time period where there's just a whole lot. I mean, West Virginia is already kind of weird. If you're not familiar with it, you can even go check out the folks at what's the name of that show? God, I just drew a total play. I just pulled a mark.
oh,
I did
Hellier,
remember mine.
Hellier.
Yeah, if you'll check out Hellier,
Yeah.
I mean, West Virginia in general has a lot of weird to it. Even historically, Native Americans they wouldn't like venture too deep into especially the western part of West Virginia. One, because it was fairly impassable because of the way the slow, like the low mountains and hills and stuff like that, they were like really close together there, the Appalachians, and so it was just difficult to traverse. And they had a ton of stories about the whole place being haunted and evil spirits and the whole works there. But anyways, when it comes to Indrid Cold, the basic just the shell of the story is gentleman riding down the road. He's a strange UFO flying about. It zips off. It goes. He's driving down the road. Then suddenly, right in front of him, pops this strange character comes out of it. Dressed like a human. As we see in some of these pictures here, a very large smile, the smiling man. And he's like, "Hello, my name is Indrid. I have questions for you." And there, I forget the gentleman's name, and I have to look
Woody
it up.
Derenberger.
Yeah, Derenberger.
Yeah.
His story about his interactions with Indrid Cold after that are very big, and we discovered this too up in our time in Geneseo of interactions with aliens back in the 50s and 60s. Is they look very much like humans, and they were more than happy to give you a ride to their home planet. They could check it out, which they did the same thing with this guy, where he would go to their home planet and check it out. It's all cool and stuff like that. But Indrid Cold's case is a little more different than just a friendly visitor just popping in. It appears that there was a lot more to his story because he seemed to linger around the area, so much so that people are pretty sure that he actually even lived to an older age and died in that general area.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit of season 2 of Hellier, that looking for Indrid Cold, of what happened to him, because they had strong beliefs of where he may have ended up and things like that. But so it's a pretty interesting story. You can research that on your, because there's a zillion different layers on it. That's just the basic overlook.
Yeah,
there is. And Woody's daughter Tanya, she claimed to have continued to be visited by Indrid up until she passed. Well, I guess he passed before she did, apparently, like a year or two before she did. And I think she passed last year or the year before. It's
2 years ago, I believe.
Was it 2 years? It's pretty recent that Tanya passed. But she wrote a book as well about her time with Indrid Cold. So I think I have a copy of it somewhere.
Yeah, there's some ideas about Indrid that he may have been sort of like a different, like almost political party from whatever his home planet was, where they had different differing
almost
ideas
like
of how to interact with people. Yes, it's a very similar story to Valley Thor. But and it's
now,
those are the two big aliens that look exactly like us that have very different ideas for our paths.
Well, I'm gonna say this. So the one of the reasons why I wanted Indrid Cold brought up today is because there is an ongoing theory that Woody and his daughter and his family were kind of being drug along by the Men in Black, that Indrid Cold was one of the Men in Black, and Woody and his family was being taken for testing and things just like anybody else would, but were being fed this story for some reason nobody knows. And just to kind of reiterate that, why they would think he was. So I've actually pulled Woody's description of him straight from the horse's mouth, so you guys can kind of hear what this guy actually looked like. So he said he described him as about 35 years of age, having a trim build, was about 6 feet tall, 185 pounds, with dark eyes and dark hair slicked straight back. Cold wore a long dark coat, and beneath the coat, Derenberger was able to glimpse the fabric of his uniform that glistened beneath the coat. He also described Cold as having a tanned complexion. And also, he discussed about how he talked to him telepathically, not with his actual mouth, and that he was dressed basically in a suit, just like he described him as being like a Men in Black. And there are a lot of theories that lean towards that there was time missing before Woody would have a new encounter with him. Throughout the years, Woody ended up writing books about like all these travels and stuff that he took with him. And that literally it was just multiple abduction cases that were happening with Woody, and he was being fed a story to replace what was actually happening, like little stories just to kind of feed in that missing time.
The general idea was that Indrid Cold was like a different faction of these other guys, like where he was the good guy and those other guys were the bad guys.
Yeah, he was playing good cop, they were bad cop kind of thing.
Right.
Almost.
Yeah.
And the illustration of him at the bottom there, you can see where it's more of the slicked back hair look. But he was also known as the grinning man. You talked a little bit about that, Enzo. And I had run across, and I know Jess did too, I know we all did, run across more than one story about the grinning man that really ties into the Men in Black. And one of them had, once he had told his story, he was watching something and he came across this photo. Let me see if I can pull it up here. It's in the slides. He came across this photo here. And when he saw it, it's Conrad Veidt as the man who laughs. And when he saw this, he was like, that's the smile. That's the facial expression that these guys had when they saw him. How terrifying would that be?
Why so serious?
Yeah. Holy
That kind
cow.
of makes my butthole pucker.
But you know, if you so look at this picture of this grinning man here real quick. Let me go back to the slide with Indrid. You know, there's a resemblance there. I mean, you don't have the crazy open teeth or open mouth smile showing teeth, but there's a bit of a resemblance there. So yeah, probably not too
He
far off.
looks like a DC comic book character.
He does, very much so. And I guess my understanding is this original one here of the grinning man, this is what they based the Joker off of. So you're really spot on that, Mark. But yeah, that just gets
creepy. So while we're on Mothman, let's get through some Mothman stuff here. I want to talk about the phone call stuff. So I found kind of like, I thought this was an interesting like juxtaposition to the Black-Eyed Kids. So the Black-Eyed Kids are consistently wanting to use your phone. Even if they've come to your car, they ask you to take them home so they can use your phone. Or do you have your phone on you? I want to use your phone. It's always, you know, or your telegraph, depending on, you know, what kind of idiot is knocking at your door. But when it comes to Men in Black, they are almost associated. So after you're visited by the Men in Black, that's when the insanity really starts. The initial
that's only the
is
beginning.
Crazy. And sometimes it'll take a couple weeks before it starts, but then it starts. And one of those things is really touched on hard in Mothman Prophecies is the extraordinary, strange phone calls that come and go that will have weird beeping and clicks and mechanical sounds or just the sound of like background noise.
Children's voices that you can't understand.
And then sometimes there'll be like 1 or 2 word messages sent to them, which oftentimes become like harbingers to other things. I found several stories in Nick Redfern's books where people who had nothing to do with NASA before the Challenger exploded got those weird clicking, beeping stuff, and then someone would just say the Challenger or Challenger exploded.
That's terrifying.
Right before it happened, like literally like the day before. So, you know, what is that all about? What is could you imagine getting a phone call like that?
No.
Yeah, that's pretty weird. And along with that, some people even reported after getting the phone calls, you know, repeatedly, where like a Morse code kind of a sound, or just like honestly, some of them they even describe as just like heavy machinery, and somebody's just holding the phone up to heavy machinery running, just loud clanking, whirring, buzzing sounds. And there was also some people that reported just where occasionally in the middle of it, they would hear like a number read out. And or just like the occasional word in the middle of this cacophony of nonsense, if they bothered to do it. Keel even went as far as trying to get the phone company to try and trace it, because it was constant. Just as soon as they'd hang up the phone, it would ring again. And again, this is 1967. There was no caller ID. There was no. You just had a hard line wire running into your house, kind of a thing. And it was just you had to pick it up. You didn't know who it was. It might be important. Back in those days. And some people even reported hearing like that same kind of almost mechanical voice that they would sometimes hear in it in their head while like driving in their car, not even anywhere near a phone, something like that, where it would just be like, number 183, wake up, stuff like that. It's like,
it's
what?
Again, almost like they put a marker on you, like they can
Yeah.
put it in on you. Once they've made contact, you're marked by that, and they can just find their way right back to you. That's terrifying.
Just to clarify what Enzo said. So you learn when you read the Mothman prophecies. So if you're a fan of the movie, like I'm a fan of the movie, it has nothing. It is nothing like the book.
No,
Get the book.
Totally
the book is way better.
Yeah, in the movie,
and super wacky, which is kind of, I feel like, the whole point of all of interacting with the paranormal. It's way super wackier than you think, and to be honest, that's what you should probably come to expect, because these are forces and entities and things that are happening that are way beyond our perceived, agreed upon reality.
For sure.
It's certainly well outside of that. So prepared for the wackiness, because it's going to come.
Oh yeah.
So so what I was going to say is, if you've watched the movie, in the movie, some of these phone calls are seen. So Richard Gere, I believe it is, which is kind of taking on the part of Keel a little bit, starts getting these rapid phone calls with the weird clicks and buzzes and stuff like that. That isn't just movie hoopla. This was actually happening, and it was happening to Keel, the gentleman who wrote the book. So it's like a partial self-biography of what also was occurring to him while he was hunting through all this high strangeness in the Point Pleasant area during the Mothman kerfuffle, right? It wasn't just Mothman being seen. So they had aliens going on, and they had other cryptids happening, and they had Men in Black happening, and he was getting weird prophecies, what he thought were prophecies. A little bit of, like the Silver Bridge, he thought that was, was just a lot of insanity. And these phone calls were supposedly literally happening to him and friends that he had, and a plethora of other things too. Read the book, please. You'll be amazed and very frightened when you're done with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when Enzo was talking about that, I was just like, that really did happen to Keel.
It did. Yeah.
And many other people
going off the deep end.
Yeah.
Well,
it's lifetime of it.
Bonkers to try and wrap your head around that stuff when you're used to, A plus B equals C, in our agreed upon universe. That's not always the case when you start mixing up with some of this wackiness. You go off the track fast. And you mentioned the Silver Bridge, which that's kind of like the ending. That's always the typical ending of the Mothman story, is once the bridge collapsed, is never seen again, kind of a thing. Yeah. But leading up to that, as far as Keel's, it's not true. But Keel's thing with that is he got basically, it was basically like a Men in Black type encounter. I don't remember now if it was in person or if it was on the phone. It may have been on the phone. But again, one of those wacky phone calls where he was told that when the president of the United States has the Christmas tree lighting ceremony in Washington, D.C., because it was getting on towards December of 1967, when they have the official it's as soon as he lights it, it's going to cause the whole East Coast to go to total blackout. It was one of these prophecies or predictions or whatever that he was told. And he's sitting it because he was from New York City, and he was doing a story. It all originally he was doing a story for Playboy about these Mothman sightings, which were, the first one was like in November, December 1966. So he spent almost a year around the Point Pleasant area, going back and forth between New York and Point Pleasant. And so he's watching on TV at home in New York, thinking, okay, here we go. The whole place is going to black out. The whole East Coast is going to be gone. And as soon as the president lights the thing and the tree lights up, everybody cheers and claps. Oh, okay. No, the lights are still on. He's like, oh, thank goodness. News flash. Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant, West Virginia has collapsed.
Yeah.
You know, unknown amount of dead and people in the water and all that stuff. And he's like, oh my God, this was to keep me away from all this.
Yeah.
It was so that I wouldn't basically be there, you know, for all of this, is what his opinion about it all was. Is this is not necessary. He didn't go as far as to say they were like trying to protect him or any of that other stuff, but they basically didn't want him in the middle of it, is kind of what his opinion was.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because
Okay.
they spent so much time trying to basically drive him nuts. You know what I mean? To make him to discredit him, you know, because these things were supposed to happen and he would like sound the alarm and they wouldn't happen, which made him look a little crazy, a little nutso.
Right.
And you know,
they
that
might
was
have been
frustrating.
They might have been just trying to keep him away so he wouldn't see something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If he
I
was
feel that's
paying
more the case.
attention-
Either that, or they told him that thinking that he would go out and tell everybody and their brother and write all about
Yeah.
it in stories, saying, which would then make him look
Discredit
like a
them.
total dope, because
Right.
no one would put together that he's spent the last year plus hanging out in West Virginia, and the bridge in the very town that he's been investigating, the central nexus of all of it, just collapsed and killed a whole bunch of people.
Which is awful.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a whole show just on John Keel, because
There's
that
so many
man's
books.
life was
So
strange and extraordinary, and it ended in mystery, which any good story should. Yeah, insane.
No, and that's where we
Um,
get our term. We're afraid we're going to keel ourselves.
Yeah.
We're gonna John Keel ourselves. Yeah, he went too deep. He went too deep.
Yeah. It
Um,
is one of those things you can certainly try and figure this stuff out. And if you don't, I always view it as you need to be surrounded by like-minded friends that are going to be able to pull you back a little bit. They say,
Yes,
hey,
absolutely.
pull you back
you're
from
gone
the
too
edge.
far.
I
You don't
think
want to
we've
go
all
this
done
far.
it to each other, you know, at
Yeah.
some point.
Yeah.
I know they have me for sure. Been like, okay, you need to
Time to
kinda
take a break.
back up a bit. Yeah, time to take a break. On our stuff that happens out west of town here, we had to back off because it got a little too deep,
Yeah.
and you know, we didn't know what to do with what we had and what direction to go with it, and so we had to back off. But the crazy part about it is, and it's something that the guys that do Hellier, the Newkirks, they talk about this too. And when they said it, it really made me realize that that happens to us too. Sometimes they have to back off of their investigation, especially when it comes to Hellier. And what they find is when they go back, it's ready to be picked right back up. It jumps right back in with them,
Mhm.
you know, whatever.
Like it's
it
been
is.
waiting on them. Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah,
been
it's just
waiting.
like,
And we
hey,
kinda-
I
yeah,
keep thinking about you.
Hey, you're back. All right, let's go.
we get
Yeah.
that too, you know, when we start
Mhm.
picking stuff up, yeah, west of town or whatever, it's right there ready to go again. And
Yeah.
it's interesting.
I'm gonna bring that up a little bit later on. I tasked everybody with a little thing when we started working on this, and we'll go over that in a little bit, but it has a lot to do with high strangeness after you've dealt with some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So moving on a little bit, because we've got so much to touch on here and we're already after the hour. I wanted to talk about the dream invasion kind of side of things, because it touches with the Black-Eyed Kids, and it touches very heavily with the Men in Black. And I also found a huge similarity with Hat Men.
Yep.
And I'm starting to wonder if some of these Hat Men are not paranormal, but are actual Men in Black that are popping into your
That are
dreams.
just 2D instead of 3D.
That
Yeah.
are physically
Yeah.
there, or just like some image of them is there.
Well,
almost
I
like
mean,
you're
within your
catching a
dream.
shadow.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
or it's almost like you're catching their shadow and they're cloaked, you know,
Mhm.
but you're seeing their shadow maybe. I don't know.
maybe like I found so many. So I started backtracking and I started looking through basic Hat Man stories. You know, I had this dream, or it was late at night and I walked down my hallway and there was this Hat Man at the end of it. And I started backtracking on some of those stories, and I did find stories where the Hat Man came after a long string of weirdness, which sometimes included UFO sightings. So are they seeing like what we consider maybe like, I hate to use the word demonic, but I've always considered Hatman to not actually be once human.
Right.
Or at least that's how it was to me. They were like some kind of a, I don't know, not like an earthly energy, but an otherworldly energy that wasn't once human. That's what I've just kind of come to consider
It
them.
feels right. It does feel right.
Yeah. But now I'm wondering, you know, are these somehow related in any fashion, at least with part of these stories? Like, is this a Hatman that's popping up to scare the bejesus out of you? Or not a Hatman, a Men in Black, but you're seeing it as Hatman because you're seeing him at the end of a dark, shadowy hallway.
Yep.
I don't know. But I just thought that was an interesting connection that I had never made before. And like we always say on here, it's all connected, right?
Yeah, and you know, Hatmen are like Men in Black. They're everywhere. They're not, you know, just in America. They're, you know, England, Brazil, Australia. They're all over the place. So yeah, it could be. It could just be, instead of a full form stepping through a dimension, it's just like the shadow peeking through. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's the biggest difference in them is one's the Hatman's 2D and Men in Black are 3D. Is the biggest difference.
I've always felt it was like if they needed to interact, kind of a thing, then it would be like a Men in Black type of scenario where you have the person actually there. If they don't necessarily need to interact, they're just trying to peek in and figure out what's going on. That's when you would have like that Hatman shadow type person, kind of a thing.
You know, I always kind of wondered, and this was before I started putting Hatman with Men in Black, is if like the Hatman were more of like, what do they call Earth? Sometimes it's the jail, it's the prison colony, basically. But what if it's more like a zoo? What if they're just peeking through the curtain to see the animals in the zoo, kind of thing? You know,
the funny
the
animals
are us, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not an animal.
Well, you know, and it might not be psychic; it might be mechanical in nature. I mean, we've got the technology now to make people think they're losing their mind. We can project a sound that can't be heard unless you're at the focal point of that sound. And so you can be whispering in somebody's ear while they're having a conversation, make them think they're totally nuts.
Yep.
If the technology exists for that, what else exists? What do other people have that exists? Could they insert a 2D figure into your dreams?
Maybe so. And you know what's? I'm going back to the beacon thing again. Like once they've kind of marked you thing. Something that I ran across too was the talk that like if you start thinking, if you've had this experience and nothing's happened for a while, if you start thinking about it again, then it crops back up again. So is there a two-way connection there? Like they can hear you kind of thing, you know, like you're touching base with them. So they're like, oh, hey, yeah, I remember, you know, number 6 over here or whatever.
It's chips in your brain.
Or is it a TOPA kind of a thing? Is if you start thinking about it, you're manifesting then.
Yeah, and that could be it.
Mm-hmm.
That could be it. So if you've had that connection, does it like open you up a little bit psychically so you can form those thought forms? Or
I don't know.
I don't either.
Crazy.
It is crazy.
It is nuts. Another topic I wanted to touch on was the illnesses and the sickness that comes after being in contact with both, with Black Eyed Kids and Men in Black. I found several stories, especially on the Men in Black side, where people had discussed being horribly ill after a visitation from them, and they attributed it to like a food poisoning, where if you get food poisoning from a particular food, you can't eat that food afterwards for many, many years because just the sight or the smell of it will drudge that original feeling back up. And they equate it to the Men in Black experience, that they will know when they're nearby again because those same ill, sick feelings will pop back up. It's like a harbinger for them. They then know whenever they're within reasonable distance of them because this illness pops back up. And then on the other side of things is the very bad illnesses that pop up, the cancers, illnesses they can't even define, even as a cancer or anything, that will sometimes even kill them in the end.
Well,
very similar. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and there's a lot of them with symptoms similar to radiation sickness.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Similar to the radiation sickness that people seem to get when they've been in contact with an actual UFO, with an actual ship. They reported a lot there. I know a lot of the Native Americans in the Uinta Basin, popularized by, of course, Skinwalker Ranch. Little known, but out beyond Skinwalker Ranch, they have a lot of UFO activity in that area, and many of the people on the reservation there have had such close contact with actual UFOs that have literally been underneath of them when they popped up. And these people then report horrible cancers, skin issues afterwards, blindness. And I can't remember, there's a name for that. I cannot remember what that's called, the radiation blindness you get after being in contact with one.
Oh,
there's a name for it. I can't remember it, but
I have to look it up.
It seems very similar to some of these other illnesses that people are dealing with when they've been in contact with the Men in Black or with the Black-Eyed Kids. So there's got to be something similar.
And to play skeptic and to be fair about it, anytime I go to, like, because I've been to a few like larger conferences and things like that where a lot of people show up from all over the world at the same time, and I'm sick as a dog afterwards, because you've got people from all over the world all convening at the same place, bringing their local native illness with you that spreads it out to everybody else and infects it out. I know we live in an age where people aren't familiar with contagious diseases and how to deal with them. But it is one of those things where it's for people that go to a lot of like conventions and stuff like that, they refer to it as the con crud, where you generally get some kind of like a flu or a cold kind of a thing. Last year when I went to Contact in the Desert, I had horrible kind of almost bronchitis level type chest congestion. This year I went and I was fine for like a week after I got home, and then just have this horrible head cold that I'm still kind of fighting almost a month later. And it's tough to strip. So if you're dealing with something from another world, another dimension, another reality, of course, you're probably going to catch a little bug. They brought with it.
Well, and look how the European disease has spread through North America and decimated the population a few hundred years ago.
There's a lot of stories of Spanish explorers in southern Mexico and Central America of finding vast cities after initial European contact that were just totally empty. Everybody was dead. From something that was common in Europe, but they brought it and had zero defenses against it to Central America and Mexico, and it wiped everybody out. So that's actually one of those things. I mean, our sci-fi show, Star Trek and stuff like that, where they beam down to a new planet every week and interact with totally very human-like aliens with various plastic stuff on their face. That they don't encounter random illnesses like you would expect.
Thank goodness Kirk would have died the first episode.
From various sexually transmitted diseases,
absolutely
10 times over. But it is one of those things where we're very susceptible to that kind of stuff. Where, even if you're a world travel, even my travels, just deploying to a totally different place where there's already a set group of people, there's a population of whatever the local bug is wherever you go, and you're going to catch that little bug, and you're going to feel like kind of crap the first week or so that you're there because you got to get over it.
Not to mention the allergies and whatnot.
Yeah, flying on planes too. You run into all different kinds of people, and everybody's convening in one place from all different positions in the world.
So then, and that's just amongst us humans.
Yeah.
If you're going to start adding in, totally stuff not on the planet or on our plane of reality, or however you want to look at it, yeah, you're going to have a hard time. You're certainly going to have a thing. Direct contact with a physical craft kind of a thing where, yeah, it's, for their species, maybe that's a tolerable amount of radiation that their engine or drive or power system, whatever it is, can give off. That doesn't mean it's good enough for us. We don't fall under that scope of acceptable, kind of a dangers. So, and the same thing could be said for any other life form, even just here on Earth. For humans, it might be acceptable to have a certain amount of radiation come leaking out from a nuclear power plant. But then the fish in the pond nearby has 3 eyes and stuff like that. It's going to affect different species very differently. So to hear that you have close contact with something from somewhere else, that's kind of to be expected, I feel.
That's reasonable.
Yeah. It is. Good point.
Yep.
All right.
One thing that I do want to talk about and bring up, and I don't know if you're ready to yet or not, Jess, but we're kind of starting to run out of time, is we've got the black-eyed children, black-eyed kids. We've got the men in black, but then we've also got the white-eyed kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole crazy thing. They're a lot like the black-eyed kids. A big difference is, obviously, their eyes are a different color, but black-eyed children always seem to come in pairs, at least. And the white-eyed kids are almost always by themselves. And I didn't run across anywhere there was more than one, actually. Did you?
No. I actually read a couple of those stories in the last one about the white-eyed kids that had kind of come and rescued people from the black-eyed kids, oddly enough.
And they don't seem quite as out of touch either, from what I can tell. Not quite.
They aren't, but they're more aggressive. They seem more aggressive. And some of the feelings that the people that have had a run-in with feel like they were in much more danger than with the black.
It sounds to me like there's some sort of predator.
They are, and that's what they feel like.
Humans have a natural instinct around predators. I mean, we understand that we are in the presence of something that could rip our throats out.
Yep.
Well, most people. Now we've got people trying to go out and hug bears, but
Buffalo.
I just say take off the warning labels and let things sort themselves out.
That was actually almost a direct quote, Mark, was one of these when the person said, I felt like I was being eyed up and down by a predator. And this guy was a Marine. He was used to being in situations where predators were, around him. He knew that feeling. He knew that look. And that's exactly what he was getting from them. And that's freaky.
It is.
It is. They seem to think the consensus is that maybe the white-eyed kids are in charge of the black-eyed kids, or maybe there are a few,
rungs up
the ladder, from them, and they kind of keep them in check. And so the black-eyed kids would be more like the thugs or the warrior kind of thing, and then the white-eyed would be more of the chief of staff. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you that feeling of a predator, I felt it, and I can understand why somebody would totally freak somebody out. I got face to face with a bobcat just a few inches away, and I knew right away that I wanted to be somewhere far away.
Absolutely, I've been chased by one. It's not fun.
I came up over the top of that deer stand, and I just hear, and I just felt it in my bones. It's like, you can have it. I'm going to go someplace else.
It's amazing how that predator prey thing kicks in at that level. That's funny.
Yeah.
Like, I am totally defenseless. My hands are on the ladder. You can do whatever you want to my face. I am leaving. Bye-bye.
Oh my goodness. All right. Do you want to do the spaceman? Do you want to do the Solway spaceman, Pam?
Sure,
really
yeah, I'll
quick?
bring it up real quick.
Because I thought this one was interesting. So, like, I thought I knew all about Men in Black until I started researching for this show, and stuff popped up that I'd never heard of. Now, everybody who's watching, you most likely have seen this picture before. It's very famous. It's called the Solway Spaceman. It was taken back in the 60s by a gentleman who was taking photos of his daughter for her birthday in her birthday dress. And in one of the 3 shots that he took, this spaceman showed up in the background. And over the years, critics have tried to shoot it down and said that it was actually her mother standing in the back, that she was just bleached out, even though the gentleman said that the wife was actually sitting in the car at the time, and blah, 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 blah. I thought I had known all about this picture, and I kind of pooped it because I assumed it was probably just someone standing in the background. He didn't see this person kind of walk into shot as he took it and walked away. But I found out something very interesting today when I was just looking up various Men in Black topics and stories. Apparently, after this photo was first put into the local newspaper, Mr. Templeton, the gentleman who took this photo, was visited by 2 men. And I thought the story was very interesting. It was just kind of an off story for him. He thought it was 2 Shystersons that had shown up just to kind of be a bully in some way. And he let it go, and it wasn't really talked about since. But it makes absolute sense if it were Men in Black. So he was visited by these 2 men who he assumed were from the government because they were dressed head to toe in very nice black suits and hats. Talked a little weird, but they refused to show him their IDs and ended up just telling him to call them number 9 and number 10. Right? Oddly enough. He eventually ended up relenting and took them to the site where he had taken the original photo. And they were trying to get him to explain why he took a picture of this thing in the back. And he kept trying to explain to them that he didn't take the picture of it, that he didn't see it when he took the picture, that it just showed up at the picture. And apparently they weren't having it. Got very angry with him when he wouldn't admit to it. Hopped in their car and drove away and left him there to walk home alone. And that's the end of the story. But
that's crazy.
I think it's very Men in Black related.
I can see it.
I'm
if
looking
it's
at
true,
this photo,
you know,
with perspective. How tall is that person? If that's
pretty
a person,
tall.
The anime, the body just doesn't look right.
Yeah.
When I first saw it, it looked to me like a garbage bag blowing by in the wind.
A little bit. Now, it is interesting. I've studied these photos before. So there's 5 photos in existence, and he is correct. He only took 3 shots of his daughter. It was her birthday. She had just gotten a new birthday dress, and he was a amateur photographer and decided to pull over in this little grassy area here and take pictures of her in her pretty new birthday dress. There are 2 pictures before this that has her mother in it before she supposedly went back to the car. And in the photos, she's wearing a blue ruffled dress with short sleeves. And all the experts are claiming that it's just the mother in the background, but she's very bleached out from overexposure, which doesn't make sense because the front of the picture is not overexposed.
Everything else would have to be equally overexposed.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this figure in the background is certainly not short sleeved, even if it was bleached out somehow, like however the film was developed, maybe it got bleached out in the back or something like that. There are not short sleeves going on here.
No, those are not short sleeves.
Even if it was bleached out, you would still see a hint of a sleeve.
Even if that was mom's been hitting the gym. She's been working out.
Yeah, she's pretty buff.
The anatomy just doesn't look right, though.
Yeah. Regardless if it's real or not, or what have you, I just thought it was super interesting that I had just found a brand new Men in Black aspect to the story that I had actually not heard of before. So super interesting to
So
me.
my question is, did Dad actually capture the child's entire face in the pictures, or did he do a really bad job of?
No,
No,
this is zoomed in.
It's there's
that's
full photos. It's full photos of her in her little dress.
Good
But
deal.
this one is zoomed in
actual
I
because
was going to
photo
say
is-
that's a big old fail if Dad did that.
The actual photo is centered on her, but there's this
Gotcha.
weird thing behind him. It's like, who is that?
super strange.
That is interesting. Karen,
It does.
almost
Yeah,
like
as Karen says, it does seem to be like a beekeeper kind of an outfit. That's certainly one of those things. But
it is. And if you look at the neck, I mean, there's even the hint of like where the
it looks like a ruffled type of thing, like the hood for like a the beekeeper kind of a thing.
Yep.
Having just watched The Beekeeper recently on Amazon, I assume they're coming to just blow people up, but that's the whole thing. But this is one of those strange things that I remember seeing somebody trying to debunk it, that like 2 miles northwest of there is an area that they dealt with like chemicals or something, and it could have been somebody that wore the big Kyvex kind of white outfit thing that they would wear when dealing with like heavy chemicals and stuff. It's like,
you would have seen them walk up.
Notice that, wandering around behind your young daughter while you're taking a picture. I mean, sure, when people can get super focused on something in the foreground and maybe not notice, the gorilla on the basketball court kind of a thing. Thing that I'm sure we've all seen by now. I kind of get that, but this is very strange. There's no reason for somebody to be wearing a full suit, headgear included kind of thing in this kind of environment.
And I don't think
it's strange.
Tyvek
It's
existed
super weird.
at that time, did it?
What?
I don't think the
no.
Tyvek suit existed at that point. So
no,
wearing
but that is what it looks like.
Isn't she wearing like a summer type dress? I mean, so
yeah.
Was it like
you know what it looks like?
summertime?
Yeah.
It looks like one of those blow up guys with the arms that goes everywhere.
This photo was actually taken. This photo was taken on May 23rd, 1964. So it was very much springtime, going into summer, actually. So yeah. Anywho, I just thought, what a way to give credence to a story with like accidentally. So if you look at the story, especially back then when it was being reported through the newspapers, nowhere did that story include the story of the two men afterwards, ever. And it doesn't pop up except for in lengthy interviews with him years down the road, as just an aside when he was talking about all the weirdos that were coming after him afterwards, like, ooh, the spaceman and blah, 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 blah. That's a part of that. He didn't call them Men in Black or think anything of them. They were just another in the role of like weirdos that were bugging him at the time.
Right.
So I just thought that was just interesting.
Yeah. That's one of those cases of people that are way too into again, a Keel level, a Keel level 9 person trying to investigate this kind of a thing. That it was just a guy taking a picture of his daughter in a summer dress. It was just a simple picture, and there was something weird in the background that didn't make sense, that he didn't notice while he was taking the picture. And then you get crazies coming out of the woodwork trying to ask him about it. But not that they're wrong to ask questions, because there's certainly some strangeness going on here in this entire picture, because there's actually just a little bit of whatever that black business is in the far right part of the picture. There's other oddities going on in that entire picture, in the entire frame. The spaceman is only a piece of it. It's strange. It's super strange and super weird that you would think that somebody would notice, at least, that there's something else going on there. But
there's other things happening.
It's almost like a Cyberman from Doctor Who showed up.
Yeah.
Except he's not silver.
There you go.
I'm taking a picture of my daughter. Get out of the way.
Karen
Yeah,
said,
Karen
and remember back in the 60s, people didn't question officials in government. No, they didn't. Not like they do now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
And they really
well,
should have.
the latter part of the 60s is when people started to question a few things, but prior to that, you're right. A lot of people didn't question. That's why I like the Men in Black in general held a lot of sway back in the 60s and 50s and 60s, where we can certainly probably say, like, as far back as like 1947 with our post Roswell kind of a thing, where there were certainly some people that claimed to have been threatened by military types to shut the hell up about what they'd seen about Roswell stuff that have come forward.
Mhm.
And that has kind of escalated since then to a Men in Black type of thing where they're totally anonymous. So like there have been reports of people that say they're from the military, but again, just like the Men in Black thing, there's something a little off, where there was one person that said, they identified themselves as being with the Air Force, but they noticed right away that, like, where their ribbons and their name tag, they were reversed. They were on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Things like that. Or they had the wrong type of, shoes for the uniform they were wearing, that kind of a thing. There was always something just off about it.
And if you think about it, they can use that to their advantage too. If they know people see a UFO and they're worried about the Men in Black, why not send out a government official to scare them into making them think they are a Men in Black? So
I do think there was some crossover there with, actual Men in Black and actual, federal government employees.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were more than a few that was like, you didn't. This is not these are not the droids you're looking for. That attacked your car and killed your dog or whatever it was. It's certainly one of those things that has happened in the past, but there are certainly other stories where it's like, okay, this is obviously not like a regular person.
Yeah.
That's trying to again warn me off of doing the same thing. I can accept it when it's my own government thugs. You alien thugs, you guys are a totally different thing. Now it's a problem.
They come in and they have no pores in their skin, and they don't have eyebrows, and they look totally
wires
weird.
Coming out of their leg. They don't know what Jello is. They don't understand a knife and a fork or a pen, or a retractable pen. Yeah.
Yep. Then there's an issue for sure.
Yeah. I found an awesome one where in a restaurant, they had to order food for them, and they ordered them fried chicken because they figured, well, everybody likes chicken. I'll feed them chicken. And they didn't even understand how to like chew or anything. They just licked the leg. Just sit there and licked it.
Oh no, that's terrible.
And I was like, what a waste of a good piece of chicken.
That is the big thing with the overall Men in Black stories, is they don't know how to human. They don't know. They don't understand just the basic social skills to accept the Jello and eat it with a spoon or whatever, or how to cut a steak with a knife and a fork, or licking a chicken.
Licking the chicken.
The sign said finger licking, good dummy. Lick your fingers afterwards.
Oh my goodness. All right. So, okay, it's getting late. Is there anything like huge you want to do before I start?
No, I think we covered a lot of it.
Okay.
We've covered a lot.
And do know, if you're interested in Men in Black, we will totally do a series because it deserves it. There's so much more to this than what we're just talking about right here.
We haven't even gotten into like individual cases. We just
not at
glossed
all.
over general stuff.
Yeah, we had to. There's no way to go deep, where we'd be sitting here for days. So
yes.
I want to, before we leave the Men in Black thing behind for the evening, I want to issue a warning. Yes, I want to issue a warning. So, I chit-chatted with Pam about this a lot too. In nearly every book that I've researched in this whole week on Men in Black, they have all included warnings by the authors. basically stating once I started delving into this and researching and reading books or watching documentaries on this, I invited the high strangeness into my life, and it has been consistent. Basically, John Keeling themselves. And I went and watched podcasts, very much like ours, where they covered topics like this, and gave out fair warnings 2 or 3 podcasts later saying, hey, ever since we did the Men in Black podcast, the weird stuff has been insane. And I actually told Enzo and Mark and Pam if anything odd happened while we were researching this week to please write it down. I don't have a whole lot to report on that. I had a bad luck week, but I think that was just solely me. I don't know. Did you guys have any weird things happen this week while you were researching?
I had 2.
I really didn't.
And one of them may not be anything because it was kind of a bad luck week for me too. I was griping about this the other night on the other podcast. My Jeep that I just got completely fixed from all the hail damage, $8,000 worth of fix, got hit. So the same door that just got replaced is now getting replaced again. So it has another $1,300 worth of damage to it. So, yeah. And they can't tell exactly what happened to it. The way the dent is, it's really odd. And then the other thing was when Jess had actually asked me, hey, you might keep track of anything that is weird happening. And I was at work. I don't know if Jennifer's still in the chat or not, but she had to come save me from the printer because the printer went haywire on me completely. So, yeah. So there's the electronic thing.
Weird stuff happens to me all the time. So any extra weird stuff, I probably just wouldn't even notice.
I didn't think
Were
twice
you okay?
about this.
Were you okay, Enzo?
Jess said that.
Yeah.
The only thing weird I've had is like a couple of weeks ago now, we went up to Geneseo and hung out and all that, and I was totally over the head cold today. I was perfectly great, everything fine. As soon as I got home, it all came back. My ears are all plugged, my head's all clogged up and all that. It's like, I just got over this. What the hell is this? It's not like I had
you hung out with
interaction
us.
with a bunch of people.
You got cooties from hanging out with us.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say it could also be attributed. So the reason why I brought this up, the reason why I brought this up, besides giving everyone at home who's watching this right now fair warning, once you dip your toes in this, often the strangeness happens afterwards. This phenomenon has been attributed to more than just the Men in Black. It's also extremely attributed to the Mothman Prophecy book, which I believe Enzo just got done rereading again. I didn't reread mine because I have it memorized. I've read it so many times, but it's absolutely true. The first time I read Mothman Prophecies, like all the way through with like some sense of what I was reading. I read it once when I was younger, more as just like a fun entertainment thing. You never really think all of that's true. But the first time I read it with some true clarity, I had all sorts of crazy stuff happening. And as Pam and Mark have mentioned before, sometimes we get in too deep with some of this stuff, and the synchronicities and the weirdness and the numbers start popping up. And to just give you an idea, I actually I journal a lot of the weird stuff that happens to me, the big stuff, not the little stuff, because it would be I'd have 80,000 more notebooks. But I pulled this up. This is from 2019. And I'm just going to read out a few things to you. So this thing covers Sally House. It covers us, me finding Astonishing Legends, the podcast. It goes into us finding Hellier. It goes into us finding out all the stuff about Kentucky, which goes into Mothman again. Like, it sits there and just builds on itself. And this was a crazy time for our entire crew. This is right after Sally House, when things just blew up. I would counter with, this was the time period where our team became the team we are now. Before this, we were really just kind of hauntings and a little bit of fringy stuff on the edges. That's all we did. After this occurred is when we went down the rabbit hole. So I'm just going to read off just a couple so you guys can kind of get the weird synchronicity. So I started denoting, and the guys know this, I see 1111 everywhere, daily. Every time I look at a clock, every time I look anywhere where there's going to be numbers, it's 1111 for me. Pam's a 4444 kind of person. I literally started seeing the 1111 the week that we went to Sally's. And that was July 12th through 13th, 2019. When we got back, we started hard researching after we did the whole, oh yeah, stuff actually happened, because we forgot about it for 2 weeks. We had that weird laziness to the house that we've discussed before. That's when we found Astonishing Legends, and that led into finding the Estes method that we had actually done at Sally's. We didn't realize that those were connected, and Astonishing Legends connected us into Hellier. That's when we found Hellier with Greg and Dana Newkirk. Oddly enough, I was watching the 4th episode of Hellier, and the guys remember this. It was really weird. I was watching it late at night. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I shut it off, and I stood up. And when I stood up, the room spun around me like I was drunk. And I heard somebody whisper in my ear, waking up. And it scared me so bad that I fell back onto the couch and had to sit there trying to work out what had just happened. That next day, I had a dream that Mothman was popping up all over our town. Right? So I went to go look up Mothman, and that's how I started finding all the Kentucky stuff about Cornstalk and being up in the caves and the gold mines.
Yeah.
And then the next season of Hellier, of course, that's what they were discussing, like pre-found it. But anyways, it goes on and on and on. At one point, I woke up to find the podcast Mysterious Universe. Their episode they did on Hellier loaded onto my front page, and I was not subscribed at the time. I'd never even heard of the show, but it was downloaded on my phone.
Nice.
Yeah, and that led into other things. Like, there's just pages of at this point, it like started with the Sally house with us, but it led us down this path of Kentucky and Mothman and Hellier, and it was just insane. And it still happens to us to this day. Like Pam and Mark had said, if we go to beach,
just get weird.
They do.
It gets insane. So fair warning. If you're going to dabble your toes in this stuff, don't John Keel yourself. If you feel yourself getting in a little too deep, learn to compartmentalize. That's what we do. We compartmentalize our lives. We have our normal lives. We have our research lives. We have our podcast lives. We keep it boxed up, because if you let it all bleed in together,
you're going to lose your mind.
Yeah.
You'll be like that crazy guy with the yarn and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've considered that. But
we actually have thought about getting a murder wall.
Yes, we have.
But, you see the exact same thing throughout like the entire Hellier season 1, season 2, where they go through the same thing of just the synchronicities that lead from one thing to another, to another, to another. The way that it goes about it, that's what resonated the most with me about that show. Which is free for, on YouTube. What is it? Strange Planet?
Planet Weird.
Planet Weird. Planet Weird. I'm sorry. Where you can go check those things out, and it's pretty amazing that these paranormal investigators are just trying to figure stuff out, sort of like we are, and they end up going down this. Almost led down this path when they follow those synchronicities to this strange place. And I've always felt that that's kind of how everything should work, is you're given these little clues of things to kind of follow, these little breadcrumbs to lead you down this path. And sometimes it's going to be something you may not be able to handle. That's when you need to kind of back off a little bit and revisit a little bit later.
Yep. We have been there.
Yeah.
Scotty, have you ever like experienced the high strangeness after investigations, or?
I don't ever recall anything that was too strange afterwards.
Lucky you. You hang out with us long enough, that'll change.
Well, I guess there was one time.
That comes about this level.
There was one time when Brian was telling me about, and I went with him on this. We went down to Jefferson Park down in Oklahoma. It's an old abandoned park. You know, they used to have community events and stuff. And we all went to supper, got something to eat, and they went back out there. I think it was Brian, Jeff, and Coleman all went back out to the park. And I left and went home because I had to get up early. And then I talked to Brian the next day, and he just asked me, he said, "Do you remember any kids' toys in the park?" And I said, "Well, other than a tricycle that was in the creek, but that was it." And he told me that they found like a dodgeball type ball that was like left there in the middle of the park. That was like, it just came off the shelf. And I was like, he's like, "I don't have no explanation for what it was, but that's a really creepy thing." You know,
that is creepy.
Just
like he told me that story once. It creeped him out so bad he got like the shivers telling me about it.
Yeah, he did.
Boy.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, even just talking about this right now just gives me the creeps because it's like, what the hell? You know, I mean, I realize it's just a ball, but you know what? I have no
brand new dodgeball sitting out in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
Right.
It's obviously put in your path for a reason. You know,
right.
You know, that's the hard part is to figure it out. What's the symbolism?
Yeah. I mean, was it like a message, you know, don't come back, or here's a present, you know?
Right.
You know, we always get frustrated when we talk about, you know, why do they speak symbolism? Why don't they just speak, you know, let us know? Maybe that's how they do speak. Maybe they just do speak symbolism.
Yeah, I mean, we do that a lot when we go out. Like we went to Jefferson Park, and we go out there, and we'll actually leave like a gift, and we'll say we're leaving this gift right here. You know, and it's more along the lines of see if we can get some interaction with them. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, there's really nothing that happens, but you know, I've seen different TV shows and stuff where they do the exact same thing, and they actually do get an interaction. But you know, it just doesn't happen all the time.
It's pretty interesting.
All right, it's getting really late. Do you all want to do the notebook game still, or
we got to do a couple at least?
We got to do a couple, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, while we're waiting for anybody who wants to do it, is there anybody left in the chats? Where it's pretty late.
There's a couple of people left. Just to reiterate, Jess has notebooks. She has 5 notebooks. So if you go to choose notebook 1 through 5, and then are you still 65 and below?
Do 75 and below.
75 and below. So, okay, we have Ginger with notebook 2, page 28.
Okay.
Hi, Ginger.
We should let Scotty pick one at some point too, because he's
absolutely
to this.
We need to come up with a cool sound for notebook game too.
Oh yeah.
Yep. I don't know what it would sound like.
Okay. This is. Oh, there you go.
There you go.
This is the Green Children of Woolpit.
Oh,
one of Mark's favorites.
It is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Just a little bit on it, so we don't take too long. If you've never heard it before, it's from the 12th century. They found a young boy and his older sister by the mouth of one of the villages. They called it the Wolf Pits area. It was basically a large hole that was dug into the ground to catch wolves. That's why that's called the Wolf Pit. They were malnourished. Their skin was green. They spoke an unknown language and wore odd clothing. They would only eat broad beans at first, but began to eat regular food and started to lose their green color when they did. The boy never returned to good health, and eventually he died. The girl became strong and eventually learned to speak English. And she later told the townspeople that they were from a place called St. Martin's Land, where the sun never shone and the light was like twilight. She said they had been herding their father's cattle when they heard the sound of bells coming from a nearby cave, and after following the sound, they ended up at the mouth of the wool pit. Old story.
They
Really
couldn't
interesting.
Find their way back.
Yeah.
It's a pretty wild one. Cool.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to play that's in chat? That was a good one, Ginger.
It was.
Okay, Scotty, pick one. 1 through 5, 75 or below.
About 344.
Okay.
It seems like I've heard that story before.
It's
You
a pretty
probably
famous
have.
one.
It
Yeah.
is a pretty
Yeah.
big story, yeah.
Okay. Oh, this is on Project Bluebeam.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So let me see where am I at? Because I'm on the second page of something. Sergey Monast claims that NASA and secret agents from the Pentagon created the Bluebeam Project to create fear and panic within the public and to turn them against religion. Using giant laser beam projections, they would create hyper-real giant alien spacecraft or even space-like beasts in the sky to create the illusion of an invasion. For 3 purposes: abolish all religions and replace them with a one-world religion based on the cult of man. Number 2, abolish all national identities to create a one-world movement. And number 3, to remove the notion of family and to force everyone to work for a new one-world government. And I will add, back when Trump was originally brought in as president, they were saying that he was all involved with Bluebeam for a while. Although how that works, I'm not sure. But I remember people were talking about that.
For the last few years, any kind of post that has any kind of wacky thing you see in the sky, usually like the second or third post at Project Bluebeam.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. It's like you can't use it now because everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
We've had to cancel the project because everybody knows about it.
Our top secret project that everyone knows about. Yeah. Doesn't
Anybody
really
else
work
want
out
to
that
throw
way.
one out there?
No? All right. We can finish out if you want.
All righty.
All right.
All right. I'm going to wing this because I lost all my notes for the ender.
Uh-oh.
So, but yeah. Okay. So thank you everybody for who stayed in the chats tonight, who is watching, who's going to watch later on, who's going to listen on a podcast. We thank you. Remember to like and subscribe and all that hootenanny on whichever device that you're using. You can find all of our show notes and other things on our website, www.bordertownparanormal.com. You'll find the Bordertown Strange button at the very top. Click on that. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you to Enzo and to Scott for coming tonight. And congratulations on becoming part of the weirdness.
Ooh.
You'll be sorry. No, we are so super glad that you guys said yes. We were a little worried, we really were looking to expand some of our knowledge. The 5 of us have a limited amount and we can only do so much. So it's really nice to bring in some other people who have some specialties that we don't have, and you will be extremely useful. I promise. You might actually be a little sad too after a while. We're putting up
You'll
with
be
us.
like second guessing your.
These
Yes.
guys aren't very
Enthusiasm.
smart. I don't know what.
Yeah. You may be excited now, but that will wane. Let me tell you.
I was thinking the same response from
I
you
have that
guys
effect
about
on
me
people.
being on there. It's
Right.
like, God, this guy won't shut up. He keeps talking about freaking Kale.
Ginger likes your sound effects, Enzo. Woohoo!
Yay! Yeah, and we're gonna have them. We already have Enzo on here a lot. We'll be having Scotty on a whole lot more too. And of course, Mark's always welcome with us. It's Pam and I's show, but really it's Bordertown show. So just gonna end this out. So watch out for those men in black. If you see a UFO, maybe not open your door to anybody for quite a while. Just to be safe. Yeah.
Our next show is
on
the
hand
31st
goods and ammunition.
from tonight.
Yeah. Our show will be in 2 weeks. We have a new podcast every 2 weeks on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central. Make sure to check that out. We show live on Facebook and YouTube, so you can join the chats and join the notebook game. Anyway, watch out for the men in black. Keep it weird, keep it strange, and remember, it's all connected.
Yay.
Good night.
Yep.
Night, everybody.
Night.
Bye.